Welcome to Conscious Conversations, a place where East meets West, a place where conversations and ideas will challenge your minds, expand your consciousness, awaken your heart, and make you think more deeply about yourself and the world.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Conscious Conversations. I'm Anthony Profeta, here as always with co-host Wes Gordon. How you doing today, Wes?
Good. Very good.
Good. Always good to see you. I enjoy having these conversations with you. But today we're going to have a little bit of a interesting conversation, which for many people becomes a difficult teaching to try to grasp their head around.
Yep.
And it does come from the teachings of Jesus and Christ, in which he's talking about, he says, you heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you to resist not evil.
Yep.
And some people are saying, whoa, oh my God, wait, what does this mean? I'm not supposed to stand up for myself. I'm not supposed to do anything. I'm supposed to maybe just like let bad people and evil things run all over me, treat me like a doormat. What does this whole idea of Jesus telling people to resist not evil mean? So today, that's going to be a little bit of what we'll try to say from our understanding of it,
right?
What this whole teaching sort of is encapsulating. And so what does this whole idea of resist not evil mean from your perspective?
It's a deep spiritual concept,
right?
And I don't think I've ever heard it taught in any churches.
Right. Well,
and I didn't even have a clue of what it actually meant. It's so counterintuitive.
Absolutely.
Especially when you're involved with the good versus evil and the devil and God scenario, one fighting the other.
Yep.
Why would such a high-level spiritual being such as the Son of God or Christ make such a statement?
Right.
And on the surface, it sounds totally foolish and ludicrous.
Yes.
But that's in lieu of the fact we don't really understand what he already knew.
Right. Coming from a different, higher level of consciousness, many of the wisdom figures, enlightened beings, these, real spiritual teachers, they're speaking from a level of understanding which an average person, if they've not experienced that level of understanding, isn't interpreting or understanding the teaching in the same way. They might just be hearing the words and thinking from a superficial level. So yeah, I get
exactly.
That.
And the closest I've seen in today's thinking is what you resist persists.
Yes,
and they run off with that one like crazy.
Right.
And it has some merit, but it's not what he was talking about at all. What he understood was there's one and only true power.
Right.
Period. And if you resist or give something merit or identify with it as being a power,
right,
then you've stepped out of grace.
Okay.
You've fallen back into under the law of you reap what you sow type of thinking.
Right.
He knew that his Father was the only power that was within him, and he was honored that and only that. And that's what he was trying to show others, that if you actually step into that energy and that understanding and that knowledge, know the truth,
right,
and the truth will set you free. Not read about it.
Right.
That's just the first level process. Know something. Like I said to you earlier, people can tell you about riding a bike.
Right.
And that's knowledge. But until you actually ride that bike, you don't know about the bike.
Right.
That's what that scripture says, know the truth.
Yeah.
He knew a truth, a spiritual truth, a law, a principle that's immovable.
Right.
And he knew that if you don't give evil any honor, God's power is the only one. So you're stepping into alignment with that energy. Everything shifts, changes.
Yeah. I get your point, and I see your point, and I do agree with that, because if you go through many of the texts of many different ancient spiritual traditions, or if you just continue talking about it from the perspective of the biblical traditions and the Christian traditions, there are many teachings from the great prophets. There are many teachings within many of the different letters and books that basically say everything comes from God, good or bad. That's why Job really didn't, flinch when good or bad was brought upon him, because he knew that everything comes from God. And even Prophet Isaiah says, both good and bad come from me. And so it's like there's just one power behind everything in the universe. And then we begin to project these ideas of, oh, that's evil, that's bad, that's this,
yes,
or, whatever. But I definitely understand that point, that there is one power that exists. from the level of understanding of, resist not evil, I think you did touch upon the fact that many look at it from a, I guess you could say, a mental level.
Yes.
Of what resists persists and all those sort of things. And there is a level of truth to that too, though. There is a degree where that does appear in people's lives, again, depending on the level of experiences and consciousness that they're coming from. And I believe that another man of peace sort of teaches the same idea of resist not evil, and the man I'm talking about is Gandhi, because he has once said that non-cooperation with evil is as much a duty to cooperation with good. And so he's sort of saying also, don't cooperate with evil, resist not, because, well, I guess maybe we should, explain or define what evil is. Like some people say that the Greek philosopher Plato said that evil is the absence of good. But I mean, then again, what is good? What is bad? That seems to be sort of different depending on different traditions, depending on different cultures, depending on this, different that. So I guess one would say that maybe evil is something that might be considered wrong or bad or wicked, or maybe a better thing is something that brings harm or to somebody else or something like that. And when we resist it, I think in a way Christ is saying, don't hate it. But it doesn't mean just allow evil things to sort of like be done to you or like, again, become like a doormat. I think because once you begin to, again, like hate something and resist it in such a way, then it's like when you begin to fight back with that, there could be a tendency for you then to be pulled into sort of that sort of mentality or energy from which that's coming from. Sort of like when someone's unkind to us, the default state of us, our mind and our actions is really to then be unkind to them. So you're evil to me, I'll be evil to you. And sort of that just begins to spiral and escalate into, worse and worse things. Somebody hits you with a bat, well, then you want to come back with a knife, and then they come back with a gun. Like it always just keeps going. If you keep dancing with it in that way. And I think that's an unskillful way. And so when he's saying resist not evil, I think he's saying, hey, don't hate it, don't judge it, don't condemn it, don't resist it, but let's sort of break out of this unskillful cycle that we're usually in. And I think he's encouraging his listeners to really set oneself sort of out of the consciousness that it is bad and try to focus more on the good. Because in some instances, the very next statement that he says after resist not evil is to turn the other cheek. Mm-hmm. And some people will say, well, what does that mean? So somebody punches me on my right, I'm supposed to let them then punch me on my left. And again, is Christ sort of saying that, just allow this stuff to happen to you, which in some ways he did do that. I mean, he allowed whatever was, the spitting on, the beating of him, the crucifixion of it. It's like he didn't resist that. But what he did was when he turned the other cheek, I believe he focused on the opposite. So when when evil was being done to him, rather than resisting it, rather than pushing back with evil, he flipped to, Father, forgive them. So I believe that there's like this switch of perspective or this switch of mentality in which, it's not that you're resisting it, but you're really, I guess, flipping to a more skillful way to live. In resist not evil, the Greek word, and I'm sorry, I don't speak Greek, so I might butcher this to all of you that might speak Greek out there, but the word that's translated into the Greek version of resist not evil is antistanai, which means to set oneself against. So it's like to set oneself against something is where he's telling you to resist not evil. So don't set yourself against it. And I believe that when you set yourself against it, in some ways, again, like that whole statement that you said, what you resist persists. When we set ourselves against something, I think you actually begin to feed the energy that you do not want in certain ways. And so then sometimes it becomes exponentially greater because you're giving more sort of energy to it. But we can talk more about this when we come back from the break. We need to take a quick pause here, but please stay with us. We'll continue talking about what this whole idea of resisting not evil does mean and how we can apply it into our life. Welcome back to Conscious Conversations. I'm here with Wes. We're having a conversation on resisting not evil, which is one of these stumbling blocks for many people because they don't really fully understand, well, what is Jesus trying to say when he tells somebody to resist not evil? And we mentioned that, some people take it as we're just supposed to just allow sort of whatever happens to us. If someone wants to smack us on the right cheek, let it happen and then turn the left. And I think your point of view that and perspective that there is one power, which I totally believe in. Here, O Israel, our Lord, our God is one, and many of the other spiritual traditions, they all claim that there is one source to everything, whether they call it Brahman or anything else. But I do also understand that people's levels of conscious experience and understanding is different too.
Yes.
And I wonder if maybe Christ understood that the level of understanding of many of the people, which is why, many times he would say for those who have ears to hear, meaning he recognized not everybody was ready to hear certain things.
Exactly.
If he understood, many of them were still in a sort of coming from the mind, cause and effect experience, because going back to this idea of, what you resist persists, or where reality, reality goes where your attention flows, I think is another one.
I've heard that.
Something like that. And I think that is true to people who are coming from that mental level,
Yes.
that what we focus on, you get more of, and the mind begins to see more of it.
Yes.
So when the mind's focused on something, it begins to see more of that in the world around it, what we think we become sort of thing. But why? Because, what you resist persists. I believe from the mental level, when you're in opposition to something, and this is what I was talking about just before the break, you're actually sending energy to what you do not want. So if there's something that you're resisting and you're saying, I don't like this, I don't want this, get it away from me, then what we're actually doing is focusing, maybe not actually realizing it, maybe subconsciously, focusing on the exact thing that we don't want in our life. And so when we begin to focus on resisting it, pushing it away, then what happens is that actually begins to grow from a mental level.
Yes.
And so that's why I think he was actually saying, turn the other cheek. So you're not focusing on it. You're actually maybe focusing on the good, or something that is, not what you don't want in your life. There was someone, I think it was a reporter, who asked Mother Teresa once, why don't you participate in anti-war demonstrations? And she said, I will never do that. But as soon as you have a pro-war, a pro-peace demonstration, I will be there.
Exactly.
And I think that's also falls into that line of, focusing on more what you do want. Don't resist what you do want. So don't be like anti-war, because then you're focusing on, exactly what you don't want, the war part. Focus more on what you do want, the pro-peace from that perspective. I think that falls into line also with the resisting not evil from the mental perspective.
Right. When you're on the mental level, like there's three levels of consciousness. There's physical, mental, and spiritual.
Right.
And the least understood and experienced is the spiritual.
Yes.
Even with the ones who think they're very spiritual, they haven't even scratched the surface. They're really into the level of concepts.
Yes.
They have mental concepts of what they think spiritual is. But like I said, until you actually experience this stuff at its core.
Yeah.
Because it says right in the scriptures that spiritual stuff is foolishness unto the regular human,
right?
The creature,
the ways of God,
the man. It makes no sense to you, any of these spiritual type principles, truths, and laws. But once you're enveloped in them and you're underneath them and you're validating them within yourself, there's a different set of energies that take place. Right. And like Christ also said, you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. So that just falls in line with what he was demonstrating, what you've been talking about is anytime that you resist or pick up something to fight with, you step back into your humanness. You're no longer under the Father's covering, which is God. And that's another problem, because I don't see where most people even know what truly God is. They have a definition in their head given to them, but they've never actually experienced one-on-one what that is for themselves.
Right. So
you're already at a loss. And then you hear these high-level spiritual concepts, and you're like, I can't do that. That's crazy.
Yeah. And something I love about the Sufi tradition, and I'd actually have to go back and look at it a little bit more, but they say that within us there's like three voices. there's the voice of God, there's the voice of the ego, and then I forget what the third one is. It might be like the conscious mind, but I have to go back and look into their philosophy. But they say that so many people take the voice of the ego as really thinking they're
Turn to
hearing
God.
spirit and hearing God.
Exactly.
But really, they haven't transcended even that mental component yet. And so they're really not getting the true wisdom truth that is higher beyond all of those other voices that they're sort of hearing with it.
Exactly.
It might be their own voice. Their own voice, the conscious mind voice, the ego, and then the voice of God. And you really have to tune in and get quiet to hear that higher one.
Yeah, it's like when I spoke to you before. This spiritual message at its core is not popular,
right?
Because it's not self-serving, it's not selfish,
no.
and you understand higher principles that you become a servant to all, and you see everyone in their true essence, which behind all that physicality and that mental composure that you have of who you think you are is a divine being, unrealized, unexpressed as of yet.
Yeah.
But that is still there. That is still within you. And that's what Christ seen in everyone.
Right.
So when you came into his presence and he looked you straight into the eyes, it was a profound effect on you because you were sensing something deeper internally than you ever had. And it can scare you.
Yes. Yes. And now just to go back to this whole idea of resisting not evil, there is another aspect that we could come to it from. And it sort of falls in line with the mental, I guess you could say, but it's the psychological truth or understanding of resisting not evil.
Yes.
And this falls into line with someone whose name I've brought up many times, but it's one of the great psychiatrists that has had an influence on me in my journey is Carl Jung. And he's basically why I believe the words of Jesus to resist not evil are important psychologically is because in the form of resisting can become something known as repressing. And so when we're resisting the evil, we begin to suppress things down, stuff it down there. We don't like it, so we sort of push it away. And from a psychological perspective, that can cause neuroses, and that can cause psychological problems, and that can cause all of these things where maybe it begins to come up at the most inopportune time. So another reason why you don't want to resist it is because, then you're just pushing it down, repressing it, and stuffing it in deep inside. And one thing that also causes is, most of the repression is done, subconsciously. We're not even realizing we're repressing all this stuff. But there is a actual medical disorder known as chronic fatigue syndrome, in which people just feel chronically exhausted all the time.
Yep.
And some research has found that is because of psychologically they're trying to repress and push down. They're resisting all of this stuff within them that they don't like. So they're resisting the evilness or the negativity or whatever it is. And the energy of resisting is taking so much to try and keep that down, not show it out to the world and do all that they become mentally exhausted from that. And that's why they're actually in chronic fatigue syndrome, is because subconsciously they're just repressing things and resisting things that really need to be integrated and healed.
Absolutely. That's what I love about meditation.
Right.
It's an elixir of life in my mind, because when you do a heartfelt meditation, not just a head thought, head plays its role in meditation, but when you can really go into the silence and yearn from your heart, those things that you're talking about come up, and you see them in a different light to where they can be transformed or understood. They're put into balance and perspective, and then they are gone.
Yes.
So you become lighter, you become more energetic, and you start down a deep path of self-realization back to what I call your Christhood, which is it's a different way of life that once you start experiencing it, really get a taste of it, it's hard not to keep going and keep going deeper and deeper.
Absolutely. And I believe that is the way to, heal ourselves, and all of that is by looking within. And once we do look within and we can see where we're resisting things in life or where, we're flowing in life, it begins to make life much more enjoyable.
Yes.
Because then when we're not resisting like those salmon trying to swim upstream and against the current, when we actually take ourselves and align ourselves with the current, then, that's when you begin to see miracles in your life more. That's when things just show up for you in certain ways, when you unexpectedly,
Yes.
wow, that worked out perfectly, and all those sort of things. And that comes again from, maybe again, turning the cheek, not resisting, turning the cheek and moving in alignment with, that divinity that is within you.
Yes, absolutely.
And so is there anything else you just want to touch base upon before we close out this talk on resisting evil?
That was good.
Well, just to remind you that in terms of this resist not evil, we'd love to know what it does mean to you. We just touched upon a little bit from different perspectives on what we thought, but how do you see this in your own life? Did you believe that maybe it was Jesus trying to say, hey, just fall back, just allow anything to happen to you, let them smack you, let them beat you up, use them as your doormat? But if that's really the case, then you're not really also loving yourself. And he did encourage you to, love God, love your neighbor as you love yourself. So that is an important part. We're not just supposed to be doormats in this world, but I hope you understand that in the resistance of it, we begin to actually feed more of the energy we don't want and focus on a lower form of energy when we could be focused on a much higher one. And as always, we do a thank you all for watching, for tuning in, for listening. We love to know your thoughts. Don't hesitate to leave them below. And we hope that each and every one of your days is filled with an abundance of love, happiness, and peace. Bye-bye.